Welcome and thanks for tuning in for the release of the Geelong HR Index findings for 2020. The Geelong HR Index is an initiative from Harvest Talent Recruitment and People Solutions, and it came about because we were inquisitive about what was happening in our region. I had been in operation for 10 years and the landscape had changed, and we knew instinctively that it had, but we wanted to put more insights into that. So in 2019, we launched the Geelong HR Index survey, and it's not something that we will do every year, but when there's something that is noteworthy, something that changes in the landscape, it's worthy of reporting, and that's why we're here today. I wish to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of our land, the Wathaurong people, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the memories, traditions, the culture and the hopes of their people across our region. I'd also like to introduce ourselves. My name's Maree Herath and I'm the Director of Harvest Talent Recruitment and People Solutions. And I welcome my Executive Officer, Ashley Durham, to the presentation. We are extremely grateful to our guests for committing the time and their energy to this regional initiative. So why did we do the survey? Why an HR Index survey? We really want to be across employment trends. We believe knowing the disciplines that are needed help our employers be informed. What are they competing for talent for? What are the skills that are in surplus, but also what's in demand? But it's also important to know what are the needs of our people, our employees, and how can we best develop them within our organisations. And because Harvest is an end-to-end HR services firm, we want to ensure that people don't just make the right start in an organisation, but they continue to develop and succeed, and in so doing, our economy succeeds. And that's the HR Index survey. Ash.
In 2019, Geelong was a region on the move. We led the nation in population growth and our economy was confident. We continue to gain momentum and growth across our major sectors. We were a region with strong entrepreneurial endeavour. We could have been forgiven for assuming we had many of the pieces for our economy jigsaw together. 18 months later, as we herald the end of the 2020, we see a vast different picture. With COVID came to town, the landscape changed overnight. The pandemic and the restrictions that were introduced to keep us safe saw the oxygen evaporate from two of our region's biggest contributors, education and tourism. Many industries were challenged. Others held steady, and yet other sectors flourish. With so much change, Harvest conducted the Geelong HR Index, surveying 85 of the region's employees to determine how we fared. One thing that is certain, we will not return to pre-COVID normal. The word pivot has been one of the most frequent used words in 2020. It is an app, as most organisations will change something about their approach in the new era of post-pandemic or COVID safe. This report will showcase some of their initiatives. Today, as we emerge from COVID isolation and hibernation, it's important to know where we've been, where we are now, in order to address our direction for the future.
So first to the region. 82% of employers surveyed said they would emerge from the crisis with similar or increased staff numbers. This was particularly so for professional services, but also those emerging with greater or similar staff numbers were the energy and resources sector, engineering and manufacturing, not-for-profit, transport and the health sector. Our region usually has some significant industries that impact us from an economic perspective. Education, where pre-COVID, Geelong was known as a university town, but tertiary and those educational institutions relying on international students have been casualties. Also, our sport, leisure and hospitality sectors came to a grinding halt at the peak of the pandemic, and some required significant pivots to sustain some income while others are still in hibernation. I might add, we didn't undertake the survey of the retail sector, mainly because most of our retailers are national companies and we really wanted to get the heartbeat of our region. But the sectors of education, sport, leisure and hospitality, both of those sectors reported a reduction in staff numbers. Also, to a degree, the property, construction and real estate sector reported they will emerge with less staff.
What are the contractor and casual landscape looking like?
Some sectors were recorded as having a strong increase in casuals, particularly engineering and manufacturing, health and not-for-profits. The organisations that didn't fare so well from a contractor and casual labour pool perspective was our larger employers. Those with over 100 employees, and also our big employers including government, the public sector, education and energy and resources were reducing their casual pools. Property, construction and real estate reported they would emerge with similar or less casuals overall. So this will see a number of professional contractors in addition to casual administration and general labour being released if they haven't been already. Again, sport, leisure and hospitality will emerge, but with significantly less casual numbers.
Has JobKeeper had any impact on organisations retaining staff numbers?
For organisations who gained JobKeeper, this has provided them with the opportunity to retain staff, even if on a part-time capacity, as they journeyed through the pandemic. When JobKeeper is rolled back, it will come down to business confidence and how soon they can emerge and have the return of the customers. That will be the determining factor if staff are retained post the pandemic.
And what are the hiring intentions for the period of July to December 2020?
We actually asked the question, and we kept it shorter term because not many people knew what beyond December looked like. And so we asked the question, would you be hiring any new disciplines for the July to December period for 2020? And if so, approximately how many were anticipated in terms of being added to their organisation and what disciplines in particular? Now, of the 85 employers that were surveyed, region-wide, the anticipated numbers were between 400 conservatively and 800 new hires that would take place in that period. So this shows an element of confidence. If averaged against all employers surveyed, this represents 5 to 10 new hires per company. Sectors that were impacted by the crisis did not hire. Sectors that could forge on learned how to hire and onboard despite the crisis. In March and April, hiring paused, but companies realised they could not wait it out, and as staff were coming to terms with their new ways of working, likewise new employees would need to adapt also. Some survey respondents actually said they were yet to meet in person their new hires.
What are some of the disciplines in demand for hiring during July to December 2020?
The biggest contributors we found when we surveyed the organisations first was parks and sanitisation workers. The Working for Victoria scheme saw the government, particularly local government, hiring workers to ensure the sanitisation and hygiene of our public spaces. And this accounted for approximately 120 to 150 of the estimated new hires. Then came our not-for-profit space. Social and support workers comprised 20% of the maximum estimated new hires. And our manufacturing sector continued. So process workers, 15% of estimated hires would be in either agricultural, food, or production work. Nurses and allied health, I think whether it be a pandemic or non-pandemic, we are in a growth sector in health. It showed strong demand, representing 14% of anticipated hires in the July to December period. And finally, 10% of the hires for the region were in diverse professional roles. So this tells the story that We will be hiring practical disciplines, we'll be hiring social workers, we'll be hiring health professionals and general white collar. But the region, while showing diversity in its disciplines, there's also those that were less inclined to be hired for the same period. These included disciplines in the area of property, construction and real estate, transport. Transport was predominantly because they'd hired amidst the pandemic, so they were less inclined to hire this side of the pandemic. Education and sport, leisure and hospitality.
What are some of the biggest HR challenges to arise from COVID?
Well, we divided this question, as I said, we had two questions. What was the HR challenge and what was the challenge for HR? So the HR challenge referred to the challenges associated with running companies and the people employed by those companies. And the top 5 biggest challenges were the psychological safety of workers, with 68% of respondents citing that as their biggest challenge. Then it was moving workers to remote and home working. 49% of respondents saw that as a challenge. Achieving similar productivity levels amidst new working arrangements. Abiding by hygiene and social distancing rules. This was pre-COVID safe plans. And workforce planning.
What was the biggest challenge for the HR departments?
The biggest challenge, and some of our guests will talk to it today, is getting across those daily changes in regulations. The landscape was so turbulent, and this, for anyone running staff, running the operation of their business, was the biggest impact that they felt. 62% of respondents said that was their biggest HR challenge. Then, because of all of the change, it was maintaining the personal resilience to withstand that increase in workload. Every time there was a change, there needed to be the new delivery of the service or the operation. Then there was updating contracts, updating policies, updating procedures, in order to be operational come September, October, and to return to the workplace. Every organisation in Victoria needed a COVID safe plan. Then there's continuity planning. What does our business look like? How are we going to sustain ourselves? Who do we need to sustain ourselves now and into the future? And then other organisations in the top 5 said employee engagement, and combined with fielding the volume of inquiries from staff. And employee engagement, because we moved to a disseminated workplace, people were spread. There was no more corridor conversations, kitchen, catch-ups. That was just gone. So to actually keep the engagement in a remote and disparate workplace was quite a challenge for employers.
And how did our employees fare in the crisis?
So in terms of how employees felt, we asked the question, how supported did you feel you were by the organisation? And we had anything from significant to adequate to neither inadequate or adequate. And of the responses, everyone, or the majority, in fact 2/3, said that they had significant or adequate support from their employers.
Is there any industries where the leaders provided significant support to their employees?
Yeah, it was really fascinating. It was the ones that were most challenged where the support went up. So 100% of our health sector said the support they were given was significant. Education sat at 83%. And energy and resources, interestingly, was 80%. While not as impacted by the pandemic, they have a lot of emergency response measures already in place. But the rating was much lower for agriculture. 29% rated their employers as either significant or adequate in their support. Warehouse and transport, 33%, and engineering and manufacturing, 42%. But the reason is these sectors were less affected and didn't require the level of support as those industries more impacted by the crisis. But I just want to put one more thing on that, was the construction sector. It was a little bit business continued for the most, but 100% of those surveys rated their employer support as significant or adequate, which is not normal for the more practical industries. So I think those employers in the construction actually got around to their sites to see their workers, which they wouldn't have normally done in a non-pandemic world.
Were there positives that came from the crisis?
Well, while employers early in the crisis reflected that achieving similar productivity levels at the start was a HR challenge, with 44% of those surveys saying it was a challenge. But when we asked them what worked well, 78% reflected that productivity, for the most part, was maintained. 3/4 of respondents said their employees were highly flexible and adaptable to their new ways of working. And the pandemic resulted in new discoveries or efficiencies made for over half of our surveyed audience. Video meetings, as we're here now, were the greatest win, but also those companies that require site travel and inspections benefited from doing this via web link also. Some of the biggest initiatives we witnessed was the move to remote call centres, telehealth's release, and the immediate take-up and the remote delivery of education.
How are our region's employees returning to work?
Well, the top 3 responses were returning only a portion of their workers, with the remainder still working from home or in flexible working arrangements. This has been partly employer and partly staff-led. From an employer's perspective, particularly large employers, with social distancing rules and measures, they can't actually physically bring all of their workers back. But equally, staff now comfortable in flexible working arrangements aren't that inclined to want to return to the office and have shown themselves very capable to do their work remotely. Increasing staff numbers with COVID-safe measures was another top response in terms of the return, and a number of organisations will be performing health checks on staff.
What are some of the key initiatives to be addressed as a result of COVID?
73% of the survey responses said health, safety and wellbeing of workers was number 1. Without a doubt, it came up really strongly, bedding in and ensuring that workers felt safe, and also bringing the wellbeing back, because a lot of workers did and were compromised throughout the crisis. Then analysing and readdressing strategy. A lot of implications from the crisis meant readdressing strategy. Addressing capabilities across the organisation was high. Culture, also important, and we'll hear from some of our guests around the culture piece. And agile working. We've learnt how to respond pretty quickly to a pandemic. So a lot of companies now with that momentum want to actually look at other initiatives in agile that they can undertake. Normally, last year we did a lot of condensing of information in terms of our micro, small, medium and large employers, but we found the trends more strongly around industry groupings, not necessarily the actual size of employer. What we did find is our larger employers were reducing casuals, our small to medium employers were retaining staff. Many of our micro businesses could carry on as they were pre-COVID, and they cited 75% in fact cited that there was no change to their working conditions because many are already working from home. Larger employers were addressing health, safety and wellbeing, flexible working arrangements and agile working, as well as investing further in IT and communications initiatives that were found to be perhaps lacking somewhat mid-crisis. Smaller employers were more nimble in response to the crisis. These 4 major sectors, with some exceptions, were for the majority carrying on and in some cases experienced stronger growth during the pandemic. These companies were holding steady or increasing staff numbers throughout the pandemic and only now are seeing some easing of employment. So what this meant for these sectors was the HR challenges were not as pronounced because they were more business as usual. Companies were only requiring slight changes that were necessary, perhaps in sanitisation, hygiene or social distancing. So the less they presented major HR challenges across the spectrum. Likewise, at the height of the pandemic, HR felt at times they were required to be all things to all people. They were lawyers, medics, infectious disease experts, counsellors, policy officers, as well as governance and compliance specialists. Things did settle, however, for this industry. So they have less hurdle in the return to work, aside from bringing their office staff back in a COVID-safe capacity, and continue to ensure health, safety and wellbeing is attained. Amidst this was the property and real estate sector, however, that was busy with the inquiry of tenants, but then dipped with rent holidays and the real estate sales market dipping significantly. Within the broader sector, they had some challenge. One benefit is that technology for group meetings, site inspections or home opens has really advanced and will probably remain. Additionally, the transport sector, particularly the domestic transport segment, did well with the rush on local supply. But transport includes passenger transport, and we are fortunate to learn how our major airport, Avalon Airport, fared. And we welcome Justin Giddings, CEO of Avalon Airport, to present. Welcome, Justin.
Thank you.
Now, the latest news on the airport. Firstly, you must be delighted that flights are taking off from Avalon again with the Avalon to Sydney run in December.
I sure am. It's been a long time coming. So 18th of December, Jetstar starts up, flying double daily to Sydney. Would have liked it to come forward a little bit earlier, but anyway, that's where we got to. And now we're anxiously awaiting Queensland to open up their borders, and then we'll be flying into Gold Coast, hopefully by Christmas. So.
And news on South Australia?
South Australia, I haven't heard either, but I think they will be probably, for Avalon, probably more January, February.
Oh, exciting. Now, casting our mind back to March, Avalon had flights through Jetstar to Sydney, Adelaide and the Gold Coast, plus Air Asia to Malaysia and other destinations, and Bali had just kicked off with CityLink. To get one international airline to Avalon was a major achievement, but to get a second was a huge win, and you had others in the pipeline. We were looking at further development of the international terminal and further use of the airport precinct. But how sudden did the restrictions that were enforced to manage the spread of the virus impact the airport?
Do you want me to cry? Oh dear, it was amazing. So in addition to that, we also signed up Vietjet to fly into Vietnam from the end of this year as well. So we had the best year we've ever had last year. Things were going amazingly well. I'd been overseas 3 times already. And then the first thing that happened was CityLink rang me and said, Justin, we have to reduce our numbers. I said, why? And they said, because of COVID. I go, oh, okay. And I heard of COVID, but I didn't really know what it was. It was more coronavirus back then. And then they pulled out altogether. I said, well, something's wrong. And then Chinese got banned from coming into Australia soon after. And then we saw a decline in our domestic because of that. So domestic Chinese tourism is big. So Jetstar started reducing flights, then Air Asia's numbers dropped like unbelievably because they take a lot of Chinese. Then the next thing that happened was, I can't believe I remember all this, but India...
You're on the couch. It's okay.
I know, I can't fall over anymore. India banned Malaysian aircraft from going into India, and so that meant that people from Australia, we do a lot of Indians, probably about 50% of our Air Asia traffic is Indians going to India via KL, and that all stopped. So all of a sudden their numbers plummeted, but Air Asia continued to fly, and then eventually they just banned all international traffic, and then domestic just stopped as well. And so it was sudden, but it was, in hindsight it was sudden, but it wasn't really, because when you live it, it was changing every day. It was incredible. It was exciting in some ways, like it was obviously devastating, but it was exciting. So yeah, it happened probably over the course of about 3 or 4 weeks, but every day there'd be a change. Every day we get a notice that these people can't leave the country or they won't be let into Malaysia. Then it was just, yeah.
What did it mean for your staff at the airport? Because you run pretty nimble there.
We do. It's funny, we have about 35 permanents and about 47 casuals, and that's mainly in retail. At the start, I made the commitment that we would keep on as many people as we possibly could. JobKeeper was amazing, it really did help. And so we were very smart, I thought, and that's probably the thing I'm most proud of, is the way we handled our people. So a lot of the casuals we redeployed elsewhere. So we suspended our cleaning contractor, which is a risk during COVID, but we trained them up. And the cleaning contractor was amazing, I must say. They came in, they trained our staff to be cleaners. And so we replaced our cleaning contractor with staff. And then we suspended our security, mainly, not all of it, but most of our security that we could. And we redeployed our staff doing security as well. We outsourced a lot of our staff. So, as you know, Qantas and Jetstar parked 40 aircraft at Avalon, so we used our staff for that. And we also redeployed them. So Department of Defence have got a hangar at Avalon and they needed 20 people. So we said, well, here's 20 people, and it made us recover our costs. And that was quite good actually, because we were able to get the JobKeeper as well as recover the cost of the thing. So it actually worked for us very well.
Fantastic. What a lot of people don't know is at Avalon Airport, you've got a precinct there. So the precinct was used for other purposes as well and was growing amidst the crisis. Was that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So we're very fortunate that we've got probably half of our business is the property and the other half's aviation. So obviously the aviation just died, and then the property really stayed strong. Our tenants are, a lot of them are government, one of them is big as Cotton On, and they were very solid during the COVID crisis. So that went really, really well. So the other opportunities I think came along with obviously the parking. That happened really, really quickly. And I was a bit shocked. I thought, whoa, are they overreacting here? But no, they had a lot of vision to do that. And other opportunities too, just to deploy staff is the big thing. But for a long time, this is my uniform. I was very casual, and and everyone had to start working from home. But I went to work most days.
And as we were leading up to today, you mentioned you had so many different scenarios, contingencies, and you were talking about the domestic roadmap to recovery and how many incarnations you had of that. Are you able to shed some more light on some of those contingencies and scenarios that you have been mapping out? Because we now are emerging, and some of them may be playing out as we speak.
Sure, absolutely. So we have a roadmap to recovery, which is access to all of our managers, and they can update it. And we have a meeting on it probably 2 or 3 times a week at the moment. But I was updating it just before I came here, and it's being updated every day. We've got certain scenarios, so I'm forgetting about international for now and just focusing on domestic. And if we have 2 to 3 flights returning, which we are, we trigger certain things. Certain things like which cafes do we open, how do we roster staff, what staff do we bring back from standing down staff that we have, how do we run security, how much marketing do we do. All of those things have been activated now that we know we've got two flights. And then we suspect that we'll probably have 5 flights, I reckon, in January. And so we've got another trigger, and more things will open. Even menus, menus will get broader, those sorts of things.
In the return, obviously the health, safety and well-being of your staff is of utmost importance, but it's also of the passengers that are going to be returning. So what are some of the initiatives that the airport has done there?
So massive. So if you come and have a look at the airport now, it's just changed.
We won't recognise it?
You won't. I recognise it, but I don't think you will. It's so basically the days of checking in to somebody behind a desk have gone. So that no longer exists, and we've got kiosks. And we've got the first kiosk in Australia, and perhaps even the world, I'll say the world for today, that you can actually not touch the kiosk. So we had a lot of good press about this recently. So basically, you stare at the kiosk and you stare at the button you want to pick. And it actually determines by your head movement and where your eyes are looking whether or not which key to press. Not sure how you go if you're cross-eyed, but I haven't tried that yet. But no, you can actually touch it if you need to.
Amazing. Now, you cited some initiatives the airport is addressing.
I think it's probably, firstly, I think culture will be the big one, because we've been a very relaxed airport for a long time. We've been very fortunate that we're a little bit smaller, and everybody knows everybody. But we've got certain procedures now that we need to follow, and like QR coding and all those things. For example, in the lounge, you no longer will be able to see people off. You'll only be able to go to the check-in, and then anyone who's a meet or greeter will have to leave. So being able to make sure that our staff are prepared to, use those, follow those proper procedures, wear a mask, even if they drop the requirement for masks, our staff will still have masks. Making sure they sanitise their hands, doing all those things will be, I think, a change exercise for us. But the organisation has changed dramatically, but I don't think that I want to change too much, because we've got a pretty good culture, but it's just about managing and making sure that they're COVID ready.
Well, we wish you all the best, and we really appreciate you sharing today.
No, thanks very much.
Education has also been impacted, but because we have preschool, primary, secondary, vocational and tertiary, different segments had differing experiences. Notwithstanding this, the sector reported it will emerge with similar staff numbers or fewer, and new hires would probably cover teachers, administration and IT workers. The biggest challenge was ensuring the psychological safety of workers and moving to remote working. The sector was challenged in getting across the daily changes to regulations, fielding the volume of staff inquiries, maintaining personal resilience themselves, and updating contracts, policies and procedures. The sector struggled to keep employees engaged, and even though they seemed to adapt to new ways of working, employee engagement remained a challenge. But in return, some organisations are bringing staff back with COVID-safe hygiene measures, while others are having employees continue with home working. The major HR initiatives arising from the pandemic are health, safety and wellbeing. This is a sector that looks beyond its staff to its students too. Culture, agile working and analysing or readdressing strategy. We will learn how the Gordon responded as Lisa Barden, HR Operations Manager, presents. So how did that support permeate the organisation and also in your own department?
Well, there's so much pressure and emphasis on leaders and leadership, and one of the things that I think that we forget to do in that space is just to take the time to care for self first. So part of our approach there was really this: as a leader, care for yourself first, because if you're not doing that, you can't care for others, and that way they could really lead by example. We worked on elements, that fit underneath really good emotional intelligence, an emotional intelligence framework, and what we saw there is that leaders that utilised those skills actually helped their teams flourish and thrive.
And you mentioned from the HR division. So first of all, how many staff do you support at the Gordon?
At 650.
So you're a significant employer. And how did the role of the HR department change during the pandemic? It wasn't business as usual anymore.
These really big HR strategies and plans and things, you really had to focus in and prioritise on what are the most important things to do here. Make things simple for people, because things are already pretty difficult in just delivery of what they need to deliver. So make some of the processes simple. What are they anxious about? Safety. So focus on safety. Those sort of things became evident, really important. From a HR platform space, what do we need to do? We need to have a good flexible working position and policy that not only served the immediacy but looked into the future as well. And that was pretty much the portfolio of the HR work. Our main focus was about people connection, and that is really what we ran with for the last 9 months, in making sure our people were okay and that they were feeling connected and energised to do the things that they needed to do. We did some terrific initiatives. So we started off with a Say G'day program, which is where we actually put a small team of people together that rang every single employee just to say g'day. That provided the opportunity for conduit services. If people weren't okay, we could then kind of streamline them off into the right space. But the value of that particular program was really well felt throughout the organisation. Our leader, so our CEO, Joe Almino, just started making the calls on his own back. So it was a leader-led action and initiative as well. We had a suite of online materials that they could kind of consume at their own pace if they needed to. Teams could formulate their own boundaries around what they felt they needed to do to kind of maintain energy and wellness in that space. So we had lots of things happening that was all around people.
And did your students still continue through their programs? Have you seen people getting their diplomas and certificates throughout the pandemic?
Absolutely, and this is one of the joys from a teaching perspective. The priority remained on students and their student experience. There was a lot of energy into caring for their well-being, because everyone comes from different circumstances and situations. So classrooms give connection? How do you maintain that with students? So they really put a lot of effort into that. And then, you know, from a corporate perspective, we put a lot of effort into making sure that our staff are okay as well.
That's great. Post the pandemic, what are your biggest initiatives that you'll be addressing at the Gordon?
Post-pandemic will be, you know, what does this new workspace look like? Managing, I guess, the variety of requests that will come through for different working arrangements, and then how do you kind of put all that together and what does that look like?
And the student experience, the students might be more comfortable now and just want to carry on online.
Absolutely, they may love it. What I think it does bring is choice, and what it's certainly shown is collaboration, communication and innovation are alive and well in organisations. It's sometimes about...
Even if forced.
Even if forced, exactly. It's just sometimes finding, you know, the opportunity to try those things out. So perhaps where there was some mindset barriers around, you know, innovation, practice or creativity, they've kind of been broken down. So I'm really excited to see, you know, what's to come in 2021.
Well, you're definitely one of the industries that has been the one to watch in terms of how, like, because it continued, but it continued in such a different foray, and being able to be innovative and pivot and make the changes and still deliver the service.
Yes.
And as a key institution in the region, we applaud the work that you've done. Thanks for sharing, Lisa.
Thank you.
From Sport, Leisure and Hospitality, we welcome Deborah Nash, Commercial Director of Truffle Duck, and Brian Cook, CEO of Geelong Football Club. This sector has definitely been impacted. For this sector, there was the closure of many services and release or the stand down of many staff. For the sector overall, the biggest challenge was standing down staff, followed by the psychological safety of workers, legal implications, workforce planning and letting staff go. The biggest HR challenge the sector cited was that they were under-equipped for a pandemic, and continuity planning amidst the crisis was a significant challenge, as was updating policies and procedures and getting across the changes in regulations. This sector was more pronounced in the realisation that there would be redundancies, in addition to the staged return of stood-down workers.
Yeah, they were the stages. There was the stand-down stage back in March. We let go of, at that stage, 80% of our people were stood down. 20% were on part-time. Everyone was on part-time. I was on part-time. Everyone from point 2 to point 8. From
How many staff?
Including gaming, we have 150 staff.
What were other factors that you put in place that ensured that your employees were supported during that time?
Yeah,
as you said, you had stood-down workers, and it was not nice.
No. We made... We made the decision around June. We were first to make the decisions because we got the impression that staff wanted to know earlier rather than later so they could find new jobs, etc., and get their lives together. But also we had the issue of whether we told people who were going to be made redundant in the hub, tell them that whilst they were in the hub. That was a real issue as well. But long story short, I'd say 130, 135 people. 26 were made redundant. 50 had their salaries cut quite dramatically, and the other 50 remained the same in terms of their salaries, and they were the ones on the lower incomes. So we took that sort of formula, you know, and I said before about, you know, options. We had an option of saying to everyone, you take 20% and keeping everyone, but we decided not to do that. And we based our redundancies basically on those 3 pillars: stood down, and also some of the redundancies as well based on those things in the early days. Those 26 people we were most concerned about. And interestingly enough, we still think we believe it's our role to ensure they get employment, and 21 of the 26 have got employment to this date, and we still have 5 to go before we're going to be ticking that one off, and we're pretty proud of that.
How many staff did have to go?
We only literally casuals that didn't qualify for the JobKeeper in the end. So we've actually had 25 throughout this whole time, 11 full-timers, and actually all 11 of them retained all of their full-time apart from 6 weeks at the end of August to September. And that was when Melbourne lockdown again, and that's when we really had to just reassess. But they were just job enabled for that period. And then our casuals, we had all the rest of the casuals.
There'd also be a stronger focus on safety, hygiene, social distancing in particular, and health checks being performed on workers. All survey respondents from this sector said they would be readdressing strategy as a result of the crisis, in addition to addressing the health, safety and wellbeing of staff. And in most, it's addressing this for clients also. The benefit of hindsight, you're in that position now of thinking, oh, we didn't expect this. So the return is coming almost as suddenly as the pandemic hit.
I just keep saying to everyone now, Maree, can I have my last 6 months again? So the 3 plans I did, I don't do
You
again.
didn't factor the scenario we're in?
No, I had no, honestly, I can sit here and say we were now planning to February, March. We genuinely did not believe. We thought we'd be having Christmas parties maybe for 10 to 20, maybe. And to have had this so quickly come, I believe is what's thrown us. So I just want a little bit of time to just now go, right, because we're looking like we'll have to close our books as of next week. That's
for the season.
For up to the end, to Christmas. And we will do some takeout Christmas things. We're definitely going to do the seafood platters, the hams, and that will be the way in which we can basically reward everybody for thanking us. We will do that. That'll be the one thing that we will do.
I'd love to think that the mental health of our people will be at the forefront still, and that our 2 psychologists that we have right now are still there and they manage that for us, that our people have developed greater resilience through this and continue to show the flexibility that's required. I'm hoping that they own the business plan and implement it and understand how they play a part in that.
And is it a shorter term business plan now?
It's a 5-year.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, 5-year.
Yeah.
With 3 or 4 major goals and so forth and so on. So I see the next 12 months as still really high risk, but possibility of laying the seeds for a much better future in years to come.
Mm. They have been, honestly, the staff have been so important to us, and that's why we've really worked hard to keep them. At times it would have been easier, would have been much better off if we'd stood down or job enabled, but they're the key to our business. They're absolutely the key, and that's why we have our brand is the great staff. I think they're not going to love so much going back to the 2 a.m. finishes. I think we're all a little bit this is going to be
That's a late night. I'm used to 10 p.m.
No, we're used to 7 p.m. home. So, but anyway, that's, we will all get back to it, and it's what we love. So,
what's your major focus for the coming year?
Survive.
Yep. Games will return to Victoria. You see that in 2021?
Yeah, with smaller crowds. Mm-hmm. I think maybe 50% crowds. So we will try and find a way to grow again, survive and grow, put in the planks now for strategies for growth, on the basis that we don't get another wave. Because all we've been doing now for 6 months is putting in contingent measures. There's no, from my point of view, nothing's for sure forever. So I'm hoping that we can start doing that, and at the end of next year, the club is in a position where it's in a really good position to look at the future.
We've become everything to everybody right now, and that's the scary part, because I'm just so fortunate. We've had Geelong have been amazing. I think the brands remain really strong, and we've been able to open the brand and our food up to a lot of people who normally don't have access to it. So can you imagine what's happening now with everybody ringing saying, so Christmas, and you'll do this and you'll do this. And
the expectation is high.
Oh, it is. And we're unfortunately to the point where, because the events have come back,
you can't be both.
I can't be both, and it's going to be really sad, and we're just still strategically working out which way to go. We're hoping the cafe, we can keep it till the end of January. And we're even thinking maybe we might turn part of it into a takeaway coffee window, part of the front of the house. Like, we've still got lots of ideas.
In professional services, all of the companies surveyed said they would be bringing on new disciplines in the 6 months to December. So every one of our survey respondents said they were increasing their staff. Now, this sector is comprised mainly of SME, so small to medium businesses. So that was very strong for them to be able to be nimble and adaptable. Many systems that were already in the cloud were able to be transferred to a remote office environment very quickly. And it was a matter of picking up office peripherals and moving into the home office. So the sector was able to retain its productivity levels, especially with more online meetings, meaning less downtime travelling to clients' premises. The sector showed that they were concerned for the well-being of their staff because they were remote now. And it came to realise that managers with HR remits struggled to keep up with the added workload and people management commitments in the remote office environment, often requiring more touch points with their staff. The sector, in addition to addressing health, safety and wellbeing of staff, will be looking at their capabilities they have in-house and if changes need to be made. Many in the community sector found the pandemic added service streams to their offering. So in the not-for-profit, community sector and membership body space, many sectors were reducing staff, but this sector was increasing its staff numbers. Not-for-profits did more in continuity planning, and strong results came in for maintaining the psychological safety and wellbeing of workers and how they fathom the move to the home environment. In returning to work, the key HR initiatives are agile working, employee engagement and retention programs, health, safety and wellbeing, and addressing HR capabilities. We're fortunate to share this experience with one of the predominant employers that provide support and assistance to those in crisis, Lifeline, with Jason Doherty, Regional General Manager for Geelong and Victoria Southwest, who will share what transpired at Lifeline. Jason, welcome.
Thank you.
Firstly, I'd just like to acknowledge the amazing job that Lifeline does in crisis support. I'm sure the organisation has gained a significant increase in call volume. Can you share how the year has been for you?
Yeah, look, it's been a tough year, but it's been a good year as well. I suppose it's calls to our service have gone up nearly 35% across the pandemic, which has been an amazing thing to watch from an internal perspective. We started the year with 8 volunteers in our organisation, and we now have just over 100. So, and we have 35 part-time and casual staff. We had 2 casual staff when I started, so it's been. We were looking at growing the business, but I don't think we envisaged we would grow it as quickly as we have. So it's been an amazing year.
And it started with the bushfires, didn't it?
It really did. I started in the role in January, and the bushfires had occurred a couple of weeks previously, and we had already sort of envisaged training some extra people to look after. We would suspect an increase in bushfire calls, which we did have in February, and then and COVID hit in March, and it was sort of a bit of a double whammy in March and April, and we had a bit of a lull in June when we came out of the first lockdown, which was good. We sort of took half a breath like everybody did, and sort of revamped a few bits and pieces internally, but then obviously it started again, and we've just kept training people for the whole year.
And do you think that level of volume will stay as it is, or do you think that that's going to recede next year?
Look, I think we're anticipating that there'll be some other crucial times in the next 6 to 12 months, obviously with JobKeeper and JobSeeker and things like that will dissipate sometime in the first 6 months of next year, that we'll see some increases again. So we expect that the volunteer rate will dip a little bit with people probably returning to work. But having said that, we've also got some extra government support, so we'll probably keep our part-time and casual staff at pretty much what we're at levels we're at now. We've got some good partnerships with Deakin University now, so we see the influx of volunteers through placement programs. I think we're going to continue. The anticipation is by the middle of next year we'll have 150 volunteers in the service.
Workforce planning. Obviously, with the number, what was it, 8 volunteers at the start of the year?
To start with, yes.
I don't think you had that as part of your mandate.
No.
How did that play out in terms of knowing that you'd have to go from a small contingent to quite significant in a very short period of time?
There was a lot of headaches, a lot of nightmares. There was a lot of long days in terms of planning. But look, I think we've got some good people around, some operational people who we've been able to engage as well and recruit. one of which was recruited through your organisation as well. So that helped in terms of us planning and making sure that we could have a continuation. It was really important for us to go, let's not get 30 or 40 volunteers and paid staff now and then let them drain out and have to redo that. Retention was really important for us. So it's been a case of making sure that we put the plan in place and then also followed through on support and making sure that they felt like that they were supported in the role. So that's been an important part of it.
You also highlighted the psychological safety of workers was of a prime concern. Of course, crisis support workers, they need to be quite strong and resilient themselves. What were some of the things that the organisation did to support the crisis supporters?
Yeah, look, I think the model that we use, there's a lot of self-care and there's also a lot of peer support in that model. So we were doubly supportive of the fact that they were not only looking after themselves, but obviously looking after lots of extra and different types of people in crisis through the pandemic. So there was lots of professional development sessions, mentor sessions. We do call coaching. There's a lot of support from other centres as well. So we really made sure that we put that into train early in the pandemic, thinking that it might be a 2 or 3 month scenario, but we've been able to continue that on. So that's been a worthwhile addition to the model.
So what's in store for 2021 if it's been such a big 2020?
Yeah, look, I think we've got a centre in Warrnambool as well, so it's really important for us to get some continuity between both. It's a different type of centre in Warrnambool to it is in Geelong. It's always going to be a smaller centre. We always had growth plans for Geelong, so I think it's probably take a breath, hopefully, early in the new year, but certainly engage the community a lot more in Geelong. We had some good plans in terms of how we were going to get out and talk to people and make sure we got some partnerships and some collaboration going. We've been able to do that anyway, but it's not the same as sort of face-to-face, I suppose, interaction. So we're looking at doing that over the next 12 months and making sure that supports our strategy and how we support the community.
So for health, all our respondents said they would be hiring new disciplines in the 6 months to December. Given the nature of the work, the biggest HR challenge, according to all respondents, was ensuring the psychological safety of its workers and for getting across the continually changing regulations and communicating this with staff. The sector saw their workers really put in with all reporting increased employee engagement, flexibility around different working arrangements, and that they, for the most part, were able to be as productive. The biggest innovation that the pandemic allowed was the release of telehealth. Coming out of the crisis, there is the return of office workers that will be on the agenda, plus further addressing health, safety and wellbeing and new ways of working. We are pleased to find out more from Mark Verlina, who we've interviewed, who is CEO of Geelong private medical insurer GMHBA.
Were you able to adapt your call centre quite easily? Was it a painful process to move from the office into the remote office environment?
So we were one of those organisations that had it on long-term plans, particularly a part of building out a new way of working. Going forward, a home more flexible working relationship as we think through our new head office. But it wasn't on the workbench when COVID hit, and our IT and business people, extraordinary response to get everyone home within about 3 weeks. So for us, that is it a perfect technology call centre solution? No, it isn't. Has it held up well enough? So far, yes, it has. Did it involve moving a whole lot of physical equipment into people's homes? Yes, it did. So logistics was... The logistics more than the technology itself was the challenge. I think initiatives that work harder to make sure people stay connected while working remotely, we will continue to support those and accelerate those. We've certainly accelerated our mental health support, digital and others, and I can see that as a continuing theme. So I think flexible work practices more broadly as a HR theme. How do you combine distributed workforce in office workforce into a coherent whole and still develop the culture in the way you wish it to be developed? I think the opportunity is to be a bit more thoughtful than that and actually design the operating model as you wish it to work. And if we get that right as employers, we get all the benefits of a flexible workforce, and what that opens up for access to a different workforce in a different place, particularly for a geography-bound business. We can get all the benefits with I'm going to say without the downside. All models have downsides. So, and so I think we need to face into that in our agenda. I think leadership in general, leadership in proven periods of high ambiguity, uncertainty. So this time it's a pandemic, next time it could be another pandemic. But I think we've had a lesson in not assuming that things will just continue. That some things we thought were impossible, in fact, happened in the world. Things we thought were impossible about ourselves, or we never could work from home and get it done so quickly. Well, we could. So I think that challenges leadership and asks us to think about how do you lead in a more uncertain world, and that's clearly on the GMHPA agenda. At the same time, how do you lead an uncertain world and provide certainty where it needs to be provided? Because
Correct.
we actually need both. We need to be able to deal with ambiguity, but as leaders, we need to be able to help people be confident in at least what they're going to do tomorrow. It's the secondary wave of challenges of how people's home offices or home desks or home kitchen table, looking at that from a health and safety perspective, psychological perspective, privacy perspective. So we got over the initial let's get everybody out and working stage, and you get into the okay, this is going to go on more than a few weeks now. How do we make this not as sustainable as we would if this was our full-time ongoing business model, but sustainable enough that people could do it sort of day in and day out. I guess the curiosity and the test for all of us is, do we return to whatever we were and accept its strengths and weaknesses, or do we take what we've learned in terms of agility, innovation, response, flexibility from ourselves and our workforce about, well, we can do things differently when we have to. We can be efficient and effective in a different way. And so, it'll be our agenda to make sure we do pick up those threads. And the issue for me isn't whether things return to normal, whatever that means. It's what do we make conscious out of this?
Was there any sectors that were stable during the crisis?
The government and public sector. So Geelong has increased in that space over the years, and we have a number of employers in the public sector space. Also, the energy and resources sector held steady too. So they saw themselves emerging with similar staff numbers, and in the two sectors, government and public sector as well. Both sectors being larger with more complex systems, and while the energy and resources sector felt equipped for a pandemic, but both with predominant office workers, but also field workers, struggled with moving their staff to home office, and it did affect hiring and onboarding. The changes to regulations was a struggle for HR, and it was also a challenge to maintain the resilience to cope with the extra workload. The sector will be slower to bring staff back en masse, and flexible working arrangements will continue for some time yet. For government and public sector, their biggest initiatives is to address culture as staff return, and both this sector and the energy and resources sector said agile working and new ways of working would be addressed. So there will be quite a few initiatives that will be coming from this sector. As to who will lead our region's economic recovery and emergence from the crisis, you have to turn to the industries that performed well amidst the crisis. We will see our not-for-profits continue to provide support and assistance, so our social services sector will be strong. Health, with adding elective surgery, which has not been in place until recently, will have a surge in demand, and hospital beds no longer being reserved for essential medical treatment or COVID cases. Construction projects that were paused or reduced with staffing restrictions on site will see a boost, as will real estate, as interestingly, Geelong and regional becomes more attractive. As we come into summer, our agriculture and food and our engineering and manufacturing sectors seem to be placing a number of staff in the coming months, and our professional services sectors will continue with strong productivity, which will see this sector as a growth sector. We will see boosts in passenger travel with flow-on effects to tourism and hospitality, but we won't be at our pre-COVID levels yet. Thank you for joining us today for the release of our findings of the Geelong HR Index survey. All attendees who have registered will receive a free report of the region. But for a comprehensive report, whether it be on the region or your industry sector, or for the full HR Index survey, which is approximately 80 pages long, you can call us on 1300 363 128 or inquire via our website at harvesthr.com.au. The comprehensive survey, including the regional report and all 11 industries, will be available for purchase for $399. The regional report is available for $299 and industry reports are available for $199 for each industry report. We're also offering webinar attendees a 20% discount for reports purchased prior to the 2nd of December. So if you liked what you heard today, you have the opportunity to join the Geelong HR Nexus. The Geelong HR Nexus will give you access to information, allow you to attend HR roundtables and masterclasses to learn more, have access to subject matter experts as well as other peers in HR or who have HR remits, gain complimentary reports and further HR insights. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to your support in 2021.